Years ago, when I was graduating with my PhD, I had the opportunity to sit and visit for just a few minutes with the university president. And he was just making small talk. It was kind of an exit interview, but there was no real serious discussion about too much. And he said, "Well, I hope you learned something while you were here." And I said, "Oh, yes, sir, I certainly did. I've been here 4 years. Actually, if you count writing my dissertation, 5. Right? And I think I learned a great deal during those 5 years. I'm not sure the university did." And he said, "What did you just say?" And I said, "Well, I know I learned a lot, but did the university learn anything in the last 5 years?" And he looked at me and said, "Why are you saying that?" Well, I said, I see the professors that teach. I saw that I taught. I saw some of my colleagues taught. And I think some of those notes that are being used by some of these people are 50 years old, you know. And I was asked to go in and teach public speaking, which I did. But we didn't have PowerPoints or anything. All we had maybe was a blackboard and a podium. We had no technology. You know, I think the institution can learn too. And here's what he said to me. He said, "You know, Bill, I don't know whether we did or not either. And I'm supposed to know. And I'm going to find out." Now, I left, but I heard from some colleagues that I created a mess for them because all of a sudden he was wanting a report periodically, I think once every semester, on what did you all learn this semester? What did you learn in your fields that you teach? What did you learn about teaching? What did you learn about your students? What did you learn about the rest of the university where you could play a role? You see, organizations can learn. First of all, people learn. And so you got all these smart people in one place. So how do we take an organization and purposefully make it a learning organization? Well, something has to happen first. And that happening is a unity that needs to occur. That we need a feeling of oneness in the group, of we all are working for or towards the same purpose. Right? And there's a book called The Fifth Discipline by a man by the name of Senge, S-E-N-G-E, and I highly recommend it. And the fifth discipline is learning. Right? But there are 3, he talks about lots of things, but there's 3 that really stand out in my mind. That if an organization is going to work together as a team, it must have a shared vision. We have talked before about what a vision is. This picture of ourselves and who we are and what we do. If someone was making a movie about a day in the life of our company, and as they went from division to division and facility to facility, what did they see? Well, for a learning organization to really work, we need to have, as much as possible, a shared vision. Now, a shared vision comes from within and up. That doesn't mean that the CEO and the board of directors do not have powerful input into the plan. They certainly do. But you can't call it a shared vision if it is 100% imposed upon you. That's not a shared vision. Right? At all. That's somebody's vision that was just dumped on us. So what we want to do is to build the vision where all of us are in the same track. We're working towards the same thing. I spent 20-some years in Alaska. I've seen a lot of dog sleds. And I'm always impressed with that leader dog out there in front. There's a funny saying up there that the view only changes for the lead dog. And I won't go any further than that. But those dogs are all pulling in the same direction. Now their harnesses make that happen. But they have the same vision. That's running. They are born to run. It's in their genes. And that lead dog is trained and knows it's in her genes where she wants to go. And they work together as a team. All right? So that has to happen. The other thing that is extremely important is that the people in the organization have to have a sense of shared values. In my classes that I teach, I ask my learners to make a list of the 15 or 16 or 18 of the most important things in the world to them. What do they really value the most? What do they value? Now, not just material things. You could link all those in one and say material things, right? If you want to. Consumer products that I'm going to throw away. That could be one if you want to. But what is it? And we get this list. And without a doubt, out of those 15 things, I'm telling you, 10 or 11 of them are going to be the same. They're going to be on the list of everybody. Not necessarily in the same order. Not necessarily using exactly the same word. Somebody might say family, someone else might say loved ones. Right? Someone might say family and friends, and someone else might say family, extended family and friends. Right? But we get that list, and they're the same. And then you ask them to do the same thing about work. What do you value about work? And we get that list. It gets difficult with but the personal one. What do you value in your life? We have a list there of 15. I tell them to get rid of 5 of them. Just save 10. And they'll do that, and it's not easy, you know. And then I say, okay, 5 more gotta go. I want you left with the 5 most important things in your life. And so they do that. Now they got a list of 5 things important in their life. And I ask them, how much time and effort do you commit to these 5 things? And very often, it's not very much. And I'll give you an example. And this isn't one of the most important things in my life, but it's something I absolutely love to do. Is to fish with a fly rod and a dry fly that floats on top of the water. I absolutely am ecstatic when I get to do it. I love it. I haven't done it in 15 years. 15 years since I held a fly rod in my hand. I'm embarrassed to say that, but it's the truth. Right? Now there's a conflict between values. I'll have people say, we value our family. Man, that's always first. And then on the list in there somewhere will be learning and education. And then work, having good work. And I will say to my learners in class, do you see any conflict with those? Oh, okay, there's no conflict. I said, well, if you're here in class, you're not at home with your family. Right? And they understand that life's about choices. And when we do the same thing at work, what is the most valuable things for you here at work? What do you value the most? Challenge, opportunity, my coworkers. They make these lists. And we get maybe 10 things. But what's most important? You know, ironically, very seldom is it pay. Pay comes in, 6 or 7, 8. The other things, everybody wants to be paid so they're not embarrassed, right? But it's not the thing it's not the big motivator that you think. As a matter of fact, and we'll talk about this later, I'll talk about it, inspiration, motivation, but as a matter of fact, pay becomes a demotivator. When you get your pay raise, you think, that's great, I love it, it's wonderful, and in about a month, you know you're earning the money and it's not enough, right? You start to grumble about it. So we have shared values. And then we have, as a result of this vision, and as a result of these values, we build a mental model of who we are and what we're doing. And we want those to be similar and close, but we don't want them to be identical twins. We want people to share the same values, share the same goals, share the same ambitions, be the same kind, but to be individuals and be thinking. If you and I agree all the time, the boss said, I don't need you. Right? So we need to be thinking. So how do we build, once we have this put together and we know what kind of organization we want, how do we build a learning organization and manage it? The first step is the people we hire. Hire bright people. And in the 21st century, hire bright, innovative, creative people who love and can accept diversity. Right? In the 21st century, they got to be bright, they got to be innovative, they've got to be creative, and they've got to be able to embrace diversity. And if they can do that, you can teach them the rest. But if they got those things inside, they're going to be a chunk of gold. They're going to be intellectual capital. Right? So you hire the best and the brightest that you can get. And you expect those people to teach your people what they know. Right? They add to the body of knowledge of your organization. Number 2, look at your orientation of new employees. What is it? There's the restroom. Here's where you hang your coat. There's where your time clock is. I'm telling you, orientation should never stop. There should be continual orientation in your company because the world is continuing to change. It's different than when you hired those folks. There should be continual orientation for everyone in the place, including the 20-year veterans. Because it's different. You don't want your company to be like a university campus. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. We live and work on university campuses in silos. The history department has no idea what they're doing over in biology. And the physics people don't know what they're doing over in speech ed. There's not silos. Well, your companies can't operate that way. There needs to be a shared orientation of what's going on everywhere in the market, in the company, in the competition, in your place. So the whole organization is learning. You need to train. You need to continually train your people. I was talking to some folks earlier about the fact that there are millions of people in the United States unemployed or underemployed. All right? You add the two together, it's millions. Well, if those folks were retrained and got some more education and got education and training in the new technologies and the new systems and the new methods, you've got a workforce that's ready to go. And they know how to work because they've been there. And we need to invest billions of dollars into retraining our entire workforce. I think our educational system should be from the womb to the tomb. And we should design it that way. Public education from the womb to the tomb. It never stops because the world changes so quickly. There were men who graduated from the universities of this country in 1938, 39, 40 in engineering and chemistry and physics. And then they went off to World War II for 5 years, and when they got back, everything changed. We have to cross-train. We have to learn how to do each other's jobs and what each other is doing. I might have an idea that could help you. I know you got something that could help me. And if you're sick, I can step in and help. If I break a back or bust a shoulder or something, you can come in and help me. And cross-training opens the avenue for all of us to be looking for ways to do things better. We need to send people back to school, into higher education. We need to take our employees and put them in the technical college if that's what would help them. Or put them in a community college if that's what we need. We need to get them into the university system. And by the way, the tuition reimbursement is a good idea, but I'll tell you what's even better is tuition advancement. You say to the student, if you go pay tuition and take this class, I'll reimburse you if you get a C or above. And the guy sitting there with a wife and 3 kids and he can barely pay the rent. He didn't have $1,000 to pay for a class. And buy the books, maybe he's up to $1,500. He didn't have it. Advancing the money. And now if he makes less than C, take it out of his paycheck over 4 or 5 months. We need to be sending people back to school and help them pay for it. The whole nation does. We need then, once we learn all of this, is to learn from one another. I think the most important person in a corporation should be the corporate librarian. I said that in a speech in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin one time, and this little lady sitting in the back of the room having lunch said, "Yes!" And she was the city librarian. Finally somebody recognizes us, she said. But I'm serious. There is so much knowledge in every organization that needs to be shared. It needs to be captured, the history of the company, and it needs to be shared. There's a company in this USA, I think it's Buckman Laboratories. I hope I have the name right. I'm not sure I do, but I think that's it. They have a system where they have a corporate history, and what this company does, if I have the name right, is they make the chemicals that you put in paint that gets the paint to stick to things. Isn't that interesting? We never thought about that, did we? We thought about the color of the paint. But what gets the paint to stick? There's a chemical that does that. And this laboratory is the leader manufacturer and researcher into this. And they have a system where they keep a record of any problem that occurs anywhere in the nation where they sell their stuff. So if the same problem shows up somewhere else, all they got to do is click on the computer. And there was an instance that I read about where a guy, I think he was up in Norway someplace, or Finland, up there in the Baltics, North Atlantic, the paint on one of the motors on a boat, outboard motor, was chipping off. And they couldn't figure out what the problem was. They got the answer from the people over in Hong Kong who had the same problem and who had figured out how to solve it in their laboratory there. And they didn't take them a year, they got it in about a week. And that's what we all need to be doing, is building this corporate knowledge, this organizational knowledge. We have it in our families. We pass it down orally in our families. We need to be doing it in our businesses. We need to teach each other. We need an intranet where we can get on the computer and learn about not what's going on in the world. We can do that at home. What's going on inside the door of our own company. As I've said before I'd build a wall, I would know what I was walling in and walling out. Well, if I'm on the outside, I can look at the whole world. If I'm on the inside, I can't always do that. But I can't even look inside. And we need to know. We need to be teaching one another. All right? One of the most important ways to do that, and I believe with all my heart and soul in this, is called mentoring. Everybody should have a mentor. Everybody should be one. Now, what is a mentor? A mentor is a person who is sincerely more interested in your success than he or she is in her own. They want you to succeed. And they're going to help you do that if you will allow them. You've heard me talk about my father. My father fought in World War II in the South Pacific. He came home to Central Illinois, became a state policeman, and in 1951 in February was shot and killed in the line of duty. 6 miles from the house. I was 8 years old. My brother was 6. My mother was just 32. My father was in the hospital. He lived about, I guess, 8 or 9 days. If that wounds had happened today, he would have lived through it. But back then, they couldn't do what they can do now. And on his deathbed, he asked a man by the name of Don Lisenby, who was his very best friend, a neighbor of ours, who lived just down the street, one house, and across the street, one house. There's where Don Lisenby lived, my dad's best friend. And he said to Don, "Promise me, if I don't make it, you'll look after Betty and the boys." He made that deathbed promise. And I'll tell you something, that man never stopped looking after my brother and I until he died in his 80s. He gave us jobs in his gas station. He taught us how to fish. He took us to the University of Illinois ball games. We never missed a father and son banquet. He was our mentor. And we went to him for advice about work, about marriage, about children, about money. And he was always there. And he was always looking after Mom. He and his wife would sit in their living room having coffee, watching TV, and they could look out the window and see my mom's house. I had a different truck one time. I traded trucks, and I pulled into my mom's driveway. And I just got in the house, and the phone rang, and it was Don wanting to know who was in the house. That is a mentor. He taught us. I think he spent more time with us than he did his own children sometimes. When I went to high school, little school, only 32 in my high school graduating class, I was 6 feet 2 inches tall as a sophomore. I was a big kid. All right? My father's dead. I could have gone the wrong way. I had a teacher of biology who was the track coach. His name was Bill Benner. He's still alive. And I've told him this 100 times or so of other students. He had probably the most influence on my life of any man I ever met. He taught me self-discipline. Taught me that I could take care of myself. I could do things. He taught me that he convinced me I could go to college because if I worked hard enough and did what he told me, I could get an athletic scholarship. Because we didn't have the money. And I did what he said, and I got that athletic scholarship, and I got a university education. That was Bill Benner. That was a mentor. I went to Washington, D.C., and I was working for the United States Post Office Department as a budget analyst. I was sitting there crunching numbers. And I was also a management analyst, management/budget analyst, and I was analyzing the way we did things and writing papers on how we could improve them. My boss was a man by the name of Emerson Markham. And he called me in one day and said, "Well, I got some bad news. I got some good news. I'll give you the bad news first, and I'm going to have to let you go." Let me go? Here I am in Washington, D.C. with a wife and a 2-year-old kid, and I'm doing the best work I could possibly do, and you're going to let me go? He said, yeah, that's the bad news. The good news is I have a job for you down in the president's office at the White House. So at 27 years old, I moved from the post office department to the executive office of the President of the United States. Now, my office was not in the White House. It was in a building right next to it. But at 27 years old, Emerson Markin had gotten me a job in the Bureau of the Budget in the executive office of the President of the United States. And I asked him why he was doing that. He joked. He says, well, I need friends in high places. He said, but the real reason I do it, and he says, you're not the first. I believe in hiring bright young people, teaching them all I can, working them to the level where they're going to get bored if I keep them, and then finding them something that will challenge them in a good place. And it's time you move on. Now that's a mentor. So I've had these mentors in my life that have been of tremendous impact. And you can be a mentor. It may be for a nephew. Remember, I had a mentor when I was 8 years old. It's hard to be a mentor to your own kids because they don't listen to you, right? But you can be a mentor where you work. And you should also look up and find one. We all need a mentor. Right? We can learn from other people. Be a mentor. Have a mentor. Learning organizations have plans to learn from vendors. You know, a salesman come in to see you and always inviting you to go out for dinner. Well, I got a different approach. You take them out for dinner and you ask them a bunch of questions about what's going on in the industry. What are your competitors doing? Buy them a few drinks. They'll rattle on. They're glad to have somebody else pay. And you'll learn a lot from these salespeople. Send out your employees and check on your competitors. What are they doing in their stores? Listen, read the journals, get their advertising material, watch, learn from your competitors. Formally, I don't mean just accidentally, have a program to do it. Do the market research, learn from your consumers. This is a paid ad. I do market research. I have a polling company. We do market research. I can tell you what your customers think. Do that. You need to know. I can tell you what they want, how they want their products improved, what they think of your product compared to the others and why. Learn. Learn from your trade associations. You can't learn everything by yourself. Join your trade association and learn. My best friend in the world is Google. Get on Google and learn. Learn from your government regulators. What's coming down the pike? What's going to happen in the Congress? Ask your trade association lobbyists what's going to happen in the Congress to impact my business. And finally, what's going on around the world? You got to know. You absolutely have to know. But once you've done all of this, you have to have a program to share it, to teach it. Teach it to everyone that works for you. All right? Then you have built and you have developed a learning organization. And now you have the competitive advantage. Thank you.